The Jungle That Watched Back. June 14, 1944. 4:20 hours. Northern Luzon, Philippines. Dawn does not arrive here. It seeps in. Mist hangs low between banana trees and tangled bamboo, heavy enough to wet rifle stocks and soak canvas packs. The air smells of rot, cordite residue from old skirmishes, and crushed leaves. Somewhere uphill, a cicada stops singing. That silence is the first warning, though no one in the American patrol notices it. Lieutenant Harold Mason, Office of Strategic Services, raises a clenched fist. 4 men freeze behind him. Their boots sink slightly into black mud, each step carefully placed to avoid snapping twigs. Mason checks his compass, then the grease pencil marks on a damp map. They are exactly where they planned to be. That is the problem. The trail ahead looks untouched. No footprints. No broken branches. No sign of movement. To Mason, that means safety. To the men watching him from the trees, it means the trap is already sprung. 30 meters upslope, hidden beneath a canopy stitched together with palm fronds and shadow, a guerrilla spotter named Thomas Elogan lowers his chin and exhales slowly through his nose. He does not raise a rifle. He does not signal with his hands. He does not move at all. He does not need to. Thomas has already seen everything. He saw the patrol 10 minutes ago, long before the Americans reached the clearing. Not because they were careless, but because the jungle itself told him they were coming. A spiderweb stretched between 2 saplings near a game trail has been torn. Not shattered. Just pulled loose on one side. Thomas noticed it because he had rebuilt that web himself before dawn, using a thin strand of vine fiber and morning dew. He checks it every day. No animal moves that carefully. Farther downslope, a cluster of ants has abandoned its column, scattering in a pattern Thomas recognizes from weeks of observation. Ants flee snakes. They do not flee men unless the men stop and start, exactly the way trained patrols do. The Americans never see Thomas. They never see the second guerrilla watching from the ravine, or the third perched in a tree with a field phone wire wrapped around his wrist like a bracelet. No whistles are blown. No shots fired. There is no signal flare. Information moves here through absence, not action. Mason steps forward again. His radio operator, Corporal James Reed, shifts the heavy pack on his shoulders. Reed pauses, frowning, and touches the back of his neck. Something feels wrong. The jungle has gone quiet. Too quiet. Ahead of them, the trail narrows, bending slightly to the left. Mason studies it, then gestures the patrol forward in pairs. Textbook movement. Perfect spacing. Above them, Thomas counts their steps. 7 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. A man in front favors his right foot. That means injury or fatigue. Another keeps brushing his sleeve against leaves, nervous habit. Thomas smiles faintly. Nervous men make predictable decisions. He reaches down, not looking, and pinches a thin cord half buried in the soil. He pulls once, gently. 200 meters away, a bamboo clapper buried under leaves clicks softly. The sound is swallowed by the forest. Only another guerrilla, crouched near a dry stream bed, hears it. That man does not move either. Instead, he scratches a mark into the dirt with a stick. 1 short line. 1 long line. 1 short line. A code learned before he could read. Recon patrol. 4 men. OSS. The Americans advance another 10 meters. They do not notice the ground beneath them has subtly changed. The soil here is darker, recently disturbed, smoothed by hand. Mason sees no prints and feels reassured. He does not know that the guerrillas rake the earth every night with woven branches to erase their own signs, then memorize the ground the way a sailor memorizes stars. Reed shifts his weight again. A leech clings to his sock. He curses under his breath and flicks it away. Thomas notes the sound. Human voices carry differently than animals. The pitch cuts through foliage in a straight line. He does nothing. Detection does not mean engagement. Detection means control. The guerrillas will not fire today. They do not need to. By nightfall, the Americans will be rerouted, delayed, misled, and reported. Their presence will ripple outward through the hills like a signal fire no one can see. Mason lowers his fist and whispers the order to move. As he steps forward, unaware eyes scanning an empty jungle, the jungle watches back, alert, patient, and already several moves ahead. The science of being invisible. The patrol moves another 50 meters before Lieutenant Mason realizes something is wrong. Not danger. Not yet. Something subtler. The jungle feels organized. Too clean. No random bird calls. No monkeys crashing through branches. Even the insects have settled into an unnatural stillness. Mason slows them again. Behind him, Corporal Reed adjusts the radio antenna, keeping it low to avoid snagging leaves. Sweat drips from his helmet liner into his eyes. He wipes it away and scans the undergrowth. Nothing. Just green depth and shadow. What Mason does not know is that every step they take is being logged by men who never touch the trail. 500 meters east, along a ridgeline barely visible through the canopy, Sergeant Emilio Navarro kneels beside a fallen log that has been hollowed by termites. To an untrained eye, it is nothing more than rotten wood. To Navarro, it is a ledger. He peers inside. The interior wall is marked with shallow notches. Each notch corresponds to a day. Each day, a runner passes here at dawn and dusk. If a notch is smudged, Navarro knows someone has brushed the log. If moisture pools differently inside, he knows a body passed close enough to alter airflow. This morning, 3 notches are disturbed. Navarro closes his eyes and reconstructs the patrol without seeing it. Number of men. Weight carried. Direction of travel. He knows the Americans are trained. That means they will avoid villages, avoid trails that look too obvious, and choose ground that appears unused. So the guerrillas use that against them. They abandon the obvious paths completely. Instead, they build false ones. Weeks earlier, Navarro ordered his men to create a network of ghost trails. They were walked just enough to look old. Leaves pressed flat, mud compacted. Then abandoned. No one uses them again. Animals do not either. The trails exist only as bait. When trained eyes see them, they follow. Navarro signals to a boy no older than 14 crouched nearby. The boy wears no uniform. His feet are bare. His name is Andres, and he carries no weapon. He does not need one. Andres takes a small pouch from his waist and sprinkles a pinch of grey ash onto the ground. It is not random. The ash comes from burnt bamboo mixed with crushed limestone. It absorbs moisture differently than soil. From a distance, it looks like nothing. Up close, it alters the way footprints settle. If the Americans pass here later, Navarro will know not only that they passed, but how fast, how tired, and whether they were alert. The jungle is not being watched. It is being measured. Back on the trail, Mason kneels and studies a patch of ground. Something bothers him. The earth looks smooth, but too smooth. He runs a finger across it. The surface collapses slightly, powdery beneath the crust. He frowns. Before he can speak, a bird explodes out of the underbrush to his left. Reed flinches, heart hammering. Mason grips his Thompson tighter, then relaxes when nothing follows. The bird was meant to flush. 20 meters away, hidden behind a screen of vines, Thomas listens. He hears the spike in breathing. The shuffle of boots as the men reset their formation. The slight metallic clink of a weapon being adjusted. Fear has entered the equation. Thomas shifts his weight for the first time in nearly an hour. He reaches into a pouch and removes a sliver of polished shell. He places it at the base of a tree where sunlight filters through leaves at a precise angle. In 30 minutes, that reflected glint will move. If it stops, someone is standing there. The guerrillas do not need to see the patrol. They let physics do the watching. Further downslope, near a creek bed, another guerrilla named Ramon submerges his hand in water and feels the current. He notes the rhythm. Upstream, a branch breaks. The current shifts slightly. Ramon presses 2 fingers into wet clay beside the creek. The impression feels unevenly. Men are approaching from the west. Ramon picks up a woven reed basket and begins fishing. To any observer, he is a farmer. To those who know the signs, his position tells them everything. Information flows uphill and down through gestures no outsider would recognize. A hat placed on a rock. A leaf turned upside down. A knot tied differently in a hanging vine. By the time Mason decides to alter course, turning the patrol south to avoid what he believes might be an ambush, the decision has already been predicted. Navarro smiles grimly when he hears the update relayed through 3 intermediaries without a single spoken word. The Americans are being guided now. They believe they are avoiding danger. In reality, they are being steered away from nothing, towards something else entirely. As the patrol disappears deeper into the trees, the guerrillas melt back into stillness. No pursuit. No engagement. Only the quiet confidence of men who have already found their enemy without ever being found themselves. Reading the ground like a map. By mid-morning, the heat settles in like a weight. The mist burns away, replaced by thick air that presses against the lungs. Sweat darkens uniforms and loosens grips. Lieutenant Mason calls a brief halt beneath a stand of tall hardwoods, their broad leaves filtering the sun into shifting patterns. The patrol fans out, rifles low but ready. Mason kneels and removes his helmet, wiping his brow. He studies the ground again, this time with more care. Something about this terrain refuses to behave the way training says it should. There are no obvious trails here, yet the undergrowth is thinner. The soil is firm, compacted just enough to suggest frequent movement. Too frequent. Corporal Reed crouches beside him. Reed points to a shallow depression near a tree root. Barely visible. Mason nods. Footprint. But it tells him nothing. No tread pattern. No direction. Just a suggestion of presence. Mason does not realize that this is exactly what the guerrillas want him to see. Less than 30 meters away, a guerrilla tracker named Isidro watches through a lattice of roots and shadow. Isidro is older than most fighters. His hair is gray. His rifle stays slung across his back. His weapon is the ground itself. Isidro learned tracking as a boy, following carabao through flooded fields and deer through limestone hills. During the war, he refined it until it became something else entirely. He does not look for footprints. Footprints lie. Instead, Isidro studies pressure. Where a heel presses into soil, the earth compresses in layers. The top layer rebounds faster than the one beneath. By pressing his thumb into the depression and counting seconds, Isidro can tell how long ago it was made. Minutes, not hours. He notices where grass blades have bent without breaking. The direction of the bend matters less than the pattern. Men carrying weight bend plants differently than animals. The leaves fold instead of snapping. Isidro also notes what is missing. A patch of moss on a rock is scraped away, but the scrape is clean. No claw marks. No irregular tears. That is cloth. A sleeve brushing past. Above, a vine hangs at a slightly altered angle. It was moved, then carefully replaced. Only someone trying to hide their passage would do that. Isidro exhales slowly. Americans. He does not signal anyone nearby. He does not need to. Another tracker 50 meters away is reading the same story from a different page of the same book. Back with the patrol, Mason gives the order to move again. They advance cautiously, but confidence has begun to erode. Every step feels like it might be watched. Reed glances over his shoulder more often now. As they move, the terrain subtly shifts. The ground slopes upward. Rocks become more common. Footing worsens. Mason thinks they are climbing toward better observation ground. They are being pulled away from water. This is intentional. Guerrilla planners learned early that thirst makes men careless. It shortens tempers. It speeds decisions. A dry patrol becomes noisy. Near a stand of palms, Mason raises his hand again. He hears something. A faint tapping sound. Hollow. Repetitive. He cannot place it. The sound comes from a bamboo segment suspended between two trees, swaying slightly in a breeze. Inside, a small stone knocks gently against the walls. A wind chime. Mason relaxes. He does not know that the breeze does not reach this part of the jungle. The bamboo only moves when someone passes nearby. Isidro notes the timing of the sound. He crouches and places his palm flat against the earth. The vibrations travel through soil more honestly than air. 4 sets of steps. Uneven rhythm. One man limping slightly. The patrol passes without ever seeing him. Isidro waits 5 full minutes after the last man goes by before he moves. He then steps directly onto their footprints. Not to follow. To erase. He drags a bundle of leaves behind him, restoring the ground to its previous state. He bends broken grass back into place. He presses disturbed soil flat with the sole of his foot, rotating slightly to mimic rain impact. Within minutes, the trail is gone. To anyone coming after, the Americans never passed here at all. By early afternoon, the patrol is tired and frustrated. Their maps no longer match the land. Their sense of direction feels unreliable. What Mason does not understand is that he is not lost. He is precisely where the guerrillas want him to be. And every decision he makes from this point forward will be anticipated before he even gives the order. Signals that leave no trace. The patrol halts again as the slope steepens. Lieutenant Mason checks his watch. They are behind schedule. Water is running low. The radio remains silent. No contact with base since dawn. Mason signals for a short rest. The men drop to one knee or lean against trees, careful to keep their profiles low. Reed removes the radio handset and adjusts the tuning knob, listening to static hiss in his ear. He taps the casing once, then stops. Sound carries too far out here. Above them, unseen, a message is already moving. A gorilla named Pilar sits in the fork of a tall tree, her body wrapped in shadow and leaves. From the ground, she is invisible. Her eyes, however, never stop moving. She does not watch the patrol directly. She watches the space around them. A leaf flutters where no wind should be. A branch trembles, then settles. Pilar tracks these disturbances the way a sailor tracks wakes on water. She reaches into a pouch and removes a small mirror no larger than 2 fingers. She tilts it once, briefly, catching a shard of sunlight and throwing it across the valley. The flash lasts less than a second. 2 kilometers away, another gorilla sees it and responds by tying a knot into a cord hanging beside him. Not any knot. A specific one. The pattern means Americans. Recon. Stopped. Low on water. No words. No radios. Nothing to intercept. Mason stands and studies the canopy. He has the uneasy feeling of being observed. He scans for snipers, for movement, for glinting metal. There is none. The guerrillas learned long ago that looking directly at the enemy invites detection. Instead, they look at consequences. Cause and effect. Near the patrol, a line of termites begins sealing a mound entrance. Termites react to vibrations. Heavy, irregular vibrations. Pilar notes this and adjusts her estimate of the patrol pace. Down in a ravine to the south, a guerrilla team listens. They do not hear voices or footsteps. They hear rhythm. Human movement has cadence. Even careful soldiers cannot fully mask it. They pause before a step. The slight double tap of a man shifting weight. The team leader, a former school teacher named Victor Reyes, taps the rhythm against his knee. Tap. Pause. Tap tap. Pause. 4 men. 1 injured. 1 carrying heavy equipment. Reyes closes his eyes and imagines the patrol. He has never seen an American up close, but he does not need to. He signals his team to move. They slip through undergrowth without disturbing it, stepping where roots already break the surface, placing feet where water has hardened soil. They do not pursue the patrol directly. They angle ahead. Reyes knows where Mason will go next. The terrain funnels movement toward a narrow saddle between two ridges. It looks like the fastest route east. Mason will choose it to regain his bearings. The saddle is empty. But the approach to it is not. As the patrol resumes movement, Mason orders Reed to attempt another radio check once they reach higher ground. Reed nods, though doubt flickers in his eyes. They reach the saddle just after 1500 hours. The space opens slightly, allowing more light. Mason exhales in relief. Then he notices something strange. There are no insects. No flies. No buzzing. No sound of wings. The ground here is bare, scoured clean. Too clean. Mason raises his hand sharply. At that exact moment, a distant bird call echoes from the west. One call. Then another. Different species. Wrong order. The guerrillas have not signaled an attack. They have signaled presence. Mason understands now. They are not alone. They never were. He considers pulling back, but every direction feels equally uncertain. He feels as though the jungle itself has folded around them. Hidden along the ridge, Reyes listens to the bird calls fade. He does not smile. This is not a victory yet. Detection is not destruction. The goal is pressure. Fatigue. Fear. By nightfall, the Americans will be exhausted. Their decisions will slow. Their discipline will slip. And when that happens, the guerrillas will not need to find them anymore. The patrol will reveal itself, turning fear into a weapon. Dusk arrives quickly in the jungle. Light drains away between the trees, leaving pockets of shadow that deepen by the minute. Lieutenant Mason orders the patrol to establish a temporary hide. They choose a shallow depression near a cluster of rocks, defensible on paper, miserable in practice. The men are silent as they work. No one speaks above a whisper. Canteens are nearly empty. Sweat has dried into salt on their collars. Corporal Reed finally manages a brief radio transmission. Static answers back. No reply. Mason knows they are compromised. He does not know how thoroughly. As darkness settles, the jungle comes alive again. Insects return. Frogs begin calling. Somewhere far off, a branch cracks. The sound is intentional. High on the ridge, Reyes gives a subtle nod. One of his men strikes two stones together once, then waits. The noise is small, easily mistaken for natural movement. Its purpose is not to scare. It is to test. Below, Reed stiffens. His grip tightens on the radio. Another sound follows. A rustle to the east. Then nothing. Mason whispers for everyone to hold position. Minutes stretch. The guerrillas never appear. Instead, they let the Americans imagine them. Fear works best when it fills in the blanks. A shadow moves at the edge of the patrol perimeter. One of the Americans raises his rifle, finger on the trigger. Mason signals him down. Above, Thomas observes through a gap in leaves. He notes the angle of the raised rifle. The hesitation. The tension in shoulders. The patrol is unraveling. Thomas drops a pebble into a hollow piece of bamboo behind him. The dull thud echoes softly downhill. Reed swallows hard. The sounds continue intermittently. Never close enough to pinpoint. Never far enough to ignore. By midnight, no one has slept. Mason considers moving under cover of darkness, but that carries its own risks. Night movement in jungle terrain invites injury. Noise. Panic. He decides to wait for first light. The guerrillas were counting on that. Just before dawn, when fatigue is at its worst, Reyes signals again. This time, the sound is unmistakable. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Mason springs to his feet, heart pounding. Rifles come up. Eyes strain into darkness. Nothing appears. The footsteps stop. Then another sound. A cough. Human. Close. One of the Americans fires. The shot shatters the stillness, echoing off the ridges. Birds explode into the air. The jungle roars back to life. The guerrillas do not return fire. They do not need to. The shot tells them everything. Position. Numbers. Discipline failure. Reyes turns to his men and gives the order. Withdraw. They melt away instantly, leaving no trail, no bodies, no evidence they were ever there. At first light, Mason surveys the area. No signs of the enemy. No blood. No footprints. Just his own shell casing lying in the dirt like an accusation. He realizes the truth too late. They were never hunting the guerrillas. They were being hunted by doubt. And the jungle itself was the weapon. The enemy who was never there. Morning light exposes the cost of the night. Lieutenant Mason's patrol looks smaller now, not in number, but in posture. Shoulders sag. Eyes are red and unfocused. Hands shake slightly as weapons are checked and rechecked. No one speaks about the gunshot, but it hangs over them like smoke. Mason makes the decision to break contact and exfiltrate south. The mission is no longer viable. Recon means nothing if the enemy already knows everything. What Mason does not know is that this decision was expected. High above, on a ridge already warming in the sun, Reyes listens as the jungle tells him the patrol is moving again. The rhythm has changed. Faster now. Less controlled. Men who want out. Reyes does not pursue. The guerrillas have no interest in chasing ghosts. Instead, they watch the Americans leave, noting their route, their pace, the direction they choose. This information will be passed along the invisible network that stretches village to village, ridge to ridge. By nightfall, every unit in the region will know that an OSS patrol was here. What equipment they carried. How they reacted under pressure. How long they stayed awake before breaking discipline. This is the real victory. Guerrilla warfare is not about destroying the enemy. It is about shaping him. Forcing him to move where you want. Think how you want. Fear what you want. As Mason's patrol pushes through the undergrowth, they notice signs of life again. Farmers in the distance. Smoke from cooking fires. Normality returning too quickly. Reed looks around uneasily. It's like they vanished, he mutters. Mason does not answer. Weeks later, in an after-action report written far from the jungle, Mason would describe the enemy as elusive, highly disciplined, and impossible to locate. He will note the absence of trails, the lack of direct contact, the psychological pressure. What he will never be able to explain is how often they were seen. The guerrillas will not record this encounter in writing. They do not need to. It becomes part of collective memory, passed orally, refined, improved. New fighters will be taught how to listen to insects. How to read broken light. How to erase a man's presence so completely that he doubts his own. By the end of the war, elite recon teams across multiple theaters will share the same complaint. They never saw the guerrillas. They never heard them coming. But somehow, everywhere they went, the enemy already knew they were there. Not through spies. Not through radios. But through the land itself. In places like Luzon, the jungle was never neutral ground. It was trained.